from WAMU 88.5 at American University in Washington. Welcome to the Politics Hour starring Tom Sherwood. I'm Kojo Nnamdi. Tom Sherwood is our resident analyst. He's a reporter for NBC4 and a columnist for the current newspapers. Tom, I have to start with an announcement today. You know that on April 1st, we're going to be at the Anacostia Playhouse, where neighborhood residents are invited to join us for a special Kojo in Your Community conversation with Mayor Muriel Bowser. Seats will be available to the public on a first-come, first-served basis, with doors opening at 4:30 and a prompt start at 5 p.m. Earlier in the week, on Tuesday, March 31st and Wednesday, April 1st, we'll be broadcasting the Kojo Nnamdi Show live from Anacostia, but without a studio audience. But everyone is invited to listen from noon to 2 on WAMU 88.5 or stream online at WAMU.org. So it is on Wednesday at 5 that we will be having a studio audience. The other 2 days we'll be broadcasting from the Anacostia Playhouse, but it'll be just like in the studio here. There won't be any audience, so to speak, because we're, a little concerned that, people like Elissa Silverman might show up there with all of her peeps demanding to be let into the studio.
Well, it's a terrific time that you're going there. I was there in Ward 8 this weekend. Wednesday night, I did moderated the forum of the 13 candidates there's a big crowd to replace Marion Barry. And there's a lot of people worried about the city issues. We'll get into them with, our guests today, but they feel they're losing ground, just as that area of the city, Ward 8 and Ward 7, are starting to get some of the economic development, that they're afraid they won't be there to see it.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons we want to go there. You mentioned that we have a guest in studio. She is Elissa Silverman, who is a member of the DC Council. She's an independent who holds an at-large seat, and this is your first visit with us since you were elected. So congratulations.
Thank you so much, Kojo. I was thinking on my way here, I've certainly worn many different hats on this program.
Yes.
And I was wondering if the reason that I change hats is because I assume a new role, I get invited onto the program, and then crickets. Then I never come back.
You don't do anything.
Well,
she gets the job, and that's the last we hear of her.
She doesn't do anything because before she had this job, she had a vibrant social life, as we've discussed on this program.
No, you previously have discussed.
She's now augmented it by having a vibrant political life.
That's so true. I'm not sure those two work in tandem, but we'll see.
Yeah, apparently when you get the vibrant political life, the vibrant social life tends to disappear.
I was taking a break the other day in the council hearing room, and she walked by and spotted me sitting there doing nothing. Don't tell my editor.
I think Tom was just waiting to pounce on a story.
I was desperately looking for a story, hoping she would do something wrong. But no, we talked very briefly, though, about the transition from being an activist, from being on point, from responding to a reporter's phone call or a community group demanding this and doing studies saying we've got to do this, we have to do that. Now, as an elected official, among 13, well, it's not 13 right now, 11 other council members, you have to learn how to count votes more. In every moment, every day when you're out in public, you're on 7 days a week, any number of hours, and then you have to persuade people. You can have the grandest idea, but if you don't have 6 other votes for the full council, you're not doing anything. What's it been like to kind of reset your mind over this?
How do you make the distinction between simply establishing principles and actually winning votes?
Well, I think it's Tom and I had a very vibrant discussion about this. It has been a transition. I would say, though, that in my time before coming to the council, I helped champion issues and what you needed to get 7 votes. So, but it is different being an insider versus an outsider, I would say. And it has been an interesting 3 months or 12 weeks on the council because each of the roles that you play it has challenges. Being a legislator, figuring out what an issue is about, having to make decisions or where you stand on that issue, doing oversight. It has been a crash course in DC government. And I'm somebody who has circled around DC government for a long time, but I feel like I've been on an incredible crash course in how DCRA works and how our parking works and snow removal. And these are all things in which I've had to get up to speed on very quickly.
And what about the other council members, whether it's the veteran Jack Evans, who has served the longest, and you've been with him and against him, depending on what the issues are, and the other council members? What is the personal relationship? Do you all operate as in your own separate orbits?
Yeah. I have to say that the veteran members have been very welcoming and mentoring in some ways, and that's been fabulous. I come with a lot of history with many of the members.
You were former Loose Lips, weren't you?
So I covered some of the folks who've been on the council for a long time. I've been an advocate and lobbied some of the council members. But
you've aggravated the hell out of some of them.
I think that, I have had really vibrant and lively discussions with many of them.
If you have questions or comments for Alyssa Silverman, call us at 800-433-8850.
Couching the remarks already.
800-433-8850. Having been on this broadcast in a variety of capacities, you know how it works. We start by discussing a few other issues before we get to issues that are specific to you. Virginia Governor Terry McAuliffe vetoed several Republican redistricting bills while he was live on the radio yesterday. But I guess doing it live on the radio while attracting a lot of attention is not ultimately as significant as the fact that he nevertheless decided to pass or to sign the budget of the Commonwealth of Virginia without any amendments whatsoever. This has not been accomplished in a long time, and I suspect that the reason he did that is because he's attempting to show that a Republican-dominated General Assembly and a Democratic governor can, at least in some respects, get along and get work done.
And the vice versa is true in Maryland, where they've reached essentially a budget agreement with very few changes, that at least a compromise. Well, Governor McAuliffe did in fact veto the redistricting matter. It's you can make little changes here and there to protect people in their reelection bids, and he said we just can't do it that way. We can't nickel and dime redistricting. We either have to do it or not do it. And so he did that. He's supposed to have done this morning, I checked just a few moments ago, to pass or veto several more bills that were passed by the legislature, but I haven't seen a news report on them yet. But McAuliffe loves being governor. He's really enjoying it. I mean, I think it's
way too much.
A little bit showy, I think, to go on a radio station and take the host pen and veto a bill. Something unseemly about that to me, but maybe I'm just old fashioned.
For the theatrical. You do know this.
Yes, he doesn't need any more theatrics.
Well, it's interesting because on the DC government, we don't have the same kind of harsh ideological differences, but we do have ideological differences, even though now there are no overt Republicans, if you will, on the DC Council. There are still philosophical differences.
We just have that ideology pushed upon us.
Okay.
It's a pretty liberal council, and there's every indication that whomever wins the Ward 8 and Ward 4 seats on April 28th will add to it, and we'll have a council that will be of the 13 members. I think 7 of them will have only served in the last 3 years.
It will be.
Generational
but, I
change.
think, the issues that face us, how we develop the city in an equitable way, how we close the achievement gap. I'm not sure those are like liberal conservative issues. Those are how do we use our resources in a way in which we're accomplishing the goals of creating a more equitable, vibrant city.
DC Delegate Eleanor Holmes Norton was the star of a video that went viral that featured her parking or misparking her car, and it was a pretty funny video, I thought, but the fact that it went viral has caused a lot of people to make all kinds of very profound alleged analyses about what the implications are for her future. The individual who was shooting the video actually said, this person doesn't deserve to be in Congress. And I have heard over these airwaves speculation along that line. I think it's stupid, it's frivolous, and it's going to go away pretty quickly. But what do you think?
Well, it would be hard to summarize it better than you just have done. I'll give her credit for one thing. She travels around the entire city, not in an entourage, not with suck-up staff. She gets in her car, she drives, she shows up. Too often late, Ms. Norton, but she still drives, and I've never seen her park badly. I did see the video. Apparently, there was no damage to the cars on the side, but don't get me started on all that free parking up there for not only members of Congress, but all those staffers who don't pay a dime to park on the city streets and where they have barriers, not to block terrorists, but to block.
Can we stick to the topic?
Okay,
at
I'm
hand
sorry.
here,
Here I
please?
go. Here's the deal. It was an embarrassing little thing for her, but she's handled it with the right amount of attention to it by saying no harm
With
done.
humor and with grace. Care to comment, Alyssa?
You
I'll
ride
just-
your bike around, don't you? Are you biking or
We're
driving?
Sometimes she walks,
we're getting
sometimes she
into
jogs.
biking weather for me, Tom. Although now I have to wear suits, and I haven't quite figured out the outfit, the change of outfits required for biking to work. But let me say that I've just saw Delegate Norton twice last week, giving rousing speeches, being on top of her game. She was at an event with healthcare workers, with the labor secretary, and there was a standing ovation afterwards. So all I can say is that I see the delegate as on, doing her job, delivering good value to the district still.
And since we're talking delegates, let's talk former delegate Walter Fauntroy just for a minute here.
I would just say one point. The only person I know who really hammers Eleanor Holmes Norton is our friend Mark Plotkin.
Oh yeah, but he hasn't weighed in on this issue, at
Well,
least
since we were at the Folger Library.
not to me so far, but I've experienced his driving, so he probably wouldn't want to weigh in on this issue.
Okay, Walter Fauntroy.
Walter Fauntroy, last week we talked about his being in Dubai and the fact that there was some mystery about it. This week there was not a great deal of light shed on that mystery, but friends of his and friends of his family held a press conference appealing for assistance for his wife. Apparently she's having trouble paying the mortgage on their home, and the fear is that it is in foreclosure or will go into foreclosure. But again, there's obviously something amiss with the former delegate himself.
Yes, Walter Fauntroy is missing in action. Johnny Barnes, his lawyer, says he believes he's in Dubai. He talks to him on the phone. Walter Fauntroy is somewhat cagey or confused about what he says or where he is and what he's doing. While he's been away, Johnny Barnes, just on March the 6th, had to file bankruptcy papers because the home on 17th and Taylor in the Crestwood section of town was in danger of foreclosure. The power was going to be shut off. His wife, Dorothy, who's 80, needed assistance. And so Denise Rolark Barnes, Keith Silver, some other people got together and said, we need to help Dorothy get through this, whatever is happening with Walter Fauntroy. So it is a bit of a mystery where he is and what he's doing. The Congressional Black Caucus is aware of this, some other organizations. The National Congress of Black Women, Ife Williams, has agreed to be the fiduciary holder of any monies that are contributed, and they say all the money will be going to help Mrs. Fauntroy. None of the money will be sent overseas in some effort to get Walter to come home. So we are worried about him. We had a moment of silence for him at the Ward 8 Forum because given his long history, the Free South Africa movement, the Civil Rights movement here, and the Home Rule government, his 20 years in Congress as a delegate, whatever criticism I could say about him, I don't need to at this moment. What we need to do is make sure he's safe and that his family is cared for.
Yep. Alyssa Silverman, care to comment? Did you know the congressman?
I interacted with Delegate Fauntroy when I was Loose Lips. I mean, certainly he's been a civil rights leader. I think everyone is concerned about his health and his welfare, and hopefully we'll know more soon.
Federal lawmakers took it upon themselves to be D.C. council members this week. Senator Marco Rubio and Representative Jim Jordan introduced a bill yesterday to loosen the city's gun laws. Their measure describes the district as, quoting here, one of the most dangerous large cities in the United States. Have you seen what they're trying to do, and what do you make of it?
I read it. I read about it in the paper, Kojo. It is infuriating. Not only for the hypocrisy of Republican leaders who talk about the overreach of federal government and states' rights and local control, but having been on the council for 12 weeks and having encountered issues again and again over the past 12 weeks, what really bothers me is that we have to spend time on defending home rule against Republicans who are interested in just being obstructionists and not interested in records of accomplishment, apparently in Congress or in their home districts, and are using our city as a way to score political points with their conservative base for the Republican presidential primaries that are not occurring here. What bothers me is that we are trying to do the things like raise the minimum wage. We've done that in the district, paid sick leave, paid family leave, and giving affordable health care to our families. And we're trying to move the ball on those things. And unfortunately, we have to spend all this time now just defending ourselves against these Republican attacks. I would rather spend our time trying to close the achievement gap, trying to figure out how we build affordable housing in our city, but our resources are drained because we're constantly having to respond to how many staffers were in this council hearing and briefs on issues where, we have made a decision as a community that we want to have as restrictive gun laws as possible that we can under the Constitution, because we think that creates safer communities.
Our guest is Alyssa Silverman. She's a member of the DC Council. She's an independent who holds an at-large seat. If you have questions or comments for her, the number is 800-433-8850. You can send email to kojo@wmu.org or shoot us a tweet at Kojo Show. If you've called, stay on the line. We'll get to your calls as soon as possible. Tom Sherwood is our resident analyst. He's a reporter for NBC4 and a columnist for the current newspapers.
Maybe we should just have in this city the same gun laws that we have on Capitol Hill. Senator Rubio, who wants to be president and couldn't find his way up North Capitol Street, and there are no turns on it because he doesn't know the city, ought to pay more attention to the people he's trying to essentially boss around. And I just want to very briefly, without starting on something else, I still think we should give in on the gun thing. I think we should open the closest private property to the Congress. We should buy it if we can't just get it, and open a big gun shop as big as possible. We can have it with a big neon gun out front with fire flashing from its barrel, and give out toy guns to all the tourist kids who come up there. So when they go to the Capitol, they can be stopped and searched by the police. And let's just make this the gun capital of the world and see how people like it up there on Capitol Hill. I think maybe would change their mind.
Don't think they would appreciate it.
Wouldn't it be great though to have a gun shop up there?
Well, I think it shows that we are in unique jurisdiction in that way. We have people, we have elected officials locally, nationally, internationally, diplomats who are targets,
right?
Who are legitimate. Yes, yes.
To start with.
Who are legitimate targets and have security, legitimate security risks. And we have had assassination attempts in this city. And I would say that part of what I spent a year and a half when I was a reporter at the Post as a night shift reporter covering crime. And I can, I would love to have Senator Rubio follow around Chief Grooms, for example, for an evening. Yes, to see, the impact of guns on our communities, not only the impact of violence, but the reverberations in terms of mental health issues and healthy communities. I mean, I am just supportive of the most restrictive gun laws possible.
To broader issues, the mayor is scheduled to deliver her State of the District speech next week, and on Wednesday she'll be with us at that Kojo in Your Community event I mentioned earlier we're holding at the Anacostia Playhouse. You said earlier this year that you think it's important the city begin spending money on priorities, that there's been a cognitive dissonance when it comes to budgeting. Explain that, please.
Well, that was in the context of the spending freeze that had been imposed on certain programs, including the program I was focused on, which was social workers at DC General. Governments spend money to do things to help residents and to improve the lives of residents. my concern was that we were not spending money on things that we clearly identified as very important. We have a homeless crisis in our city. Now, maybe that specific use of money maybe is not seen as the best use. I do think, though, we need to be spending money on our clear priorities. Affordable housing. I'm thrilled that Mayor Bowser has made that a focus, because I think it is the foundation of building healthy communities. We need to make sure that people who work in our city can live in our city. And the data shows that affordable housing in our city is just disappearing.
What you seem to be saying is that we're in better financial shape than we thought we were. So what's this idea about freezing all the time?
Well, I think we want to be responsible about spending our dollars. We just want to make sure we're optimizing that spending and spending it on things that are going to have an impact and improve the lives of residents, Kojo. We are in a good financial position in our city, but we need to make sure that we are improving the lives of our residents when we spend our money and addressing the issues that are top priorities that have been identified by our residents. That's schools, making sure that we're creating a good foundation for our kids so that they can become successful adults. Affordable housing, making sure that this is a city in which, low and moderate income people can afford to live here. I think the average apartment, two-bedroom apartment in this city, you would have to work a minimum wage job for 120 hours a week in order to afford that unit. We need to figure out creative strategies, and I think for our lowest income residents, that means we need to put more money towards subsidizing housing.
You didn't mention the DC Fiscal Policy Institute that you used to work with, but it did.
What is that organization?
Yeah, some fly-by-night group, but it did do an important study. It showed that the number of apartments under $800, it's been dropped by half. It's just a huge problem with how Mayor Bowser has committed, she says, and she has her budget next week to do $100 million a year to provide housing. And she's not just talking about sub housing for people with no income. She's talking about people low income and moderate low income people who need places to stay in the city. But do you have any sense now that this is her first budget? It's your first budget.
Right.
Has the mayor's office reached out to you and other council members to see what you want to see in the budget? Or can you give us some idea of what you think will be good in the next week? I know you don't want to preempt the mayor's announcement, but
well, we are all waiting for April 2nd, Tom. Yes. The mayor's, I want to commend the mayor. She did 3 community-wide budget forums in which she solicited opinions from residents about what they wanted in the budget. It was a very inclusive approach. She also solicited from council members what they wanted to see in the budget. My team sat down with the mayor's folks as well. I think and housing, it seems so overwhelming, but I think we need to just make sure we're using all the tools that we have in our toolkit. And that is not just about building housing, but about preserving housing.
There's a law the city's never used, but it's on the books. I think again, the Fiscal Policy Institute pointed it out. There's a law that says the city may buy a building that is about to be redeveloped or a target for redevelopment and keep it as affordable housing, but it's never been used.
Exactly. So some listeners might be familiar with the tenant right of purchase, which is known as TOPA. This is known as DOPA, which is the district right to purchase, which I don't think has anything to do with Initiative 71 or seed giveaways, and I'm sure we'll talk about that later. But Tom makes a great point, which is that we enabled this legislation, but we've never used it. And let me tell you what has been really fascinating about being a council member is I wanted to learn more about our affordable housing programs. And it's an alphabet soup: LRSP, PSH, DOPA, TOPA. But what is really helpful is to sit down with residents who are actually going through the process of trying to use these programs.
Put on your headphones, please, so we can talk with Chris in Washington, D.C. Chris, you're on the air. Go ahead, please.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Kojo. It's great to hear your voice, Alyssa. This is Chris from D.C. for Reasonable Development. and Chris Otten. And I guess I wanted to call because I heard, Tom, you mentioned that you think the council is more of a liberal council. I can't help but wonder to think that it's actually a neoliberal council where the concept of privatizing massive tracts of public land is okay, giving away public land. Two cases in point, McMillan and Barry Farm. And I guess I wanted to see Alyssa as an at-large council member and an oversight person on the committee of the whole, what you might be doing given with McMillan and the PR fiasco with Fontaine being used to neutralize public opposition, if you'd call for a public hearing on that with Phil Mendelson. And the same goes for Barry Farm, where there's 400 families facing displacement and privatization of that land.
Allow me to have Alyssa Silverman respond. You've now entered the McMillan zone, we call it here.
Great to hear from you, Chris. And actually, Chris created one of my great moments at the council when I actually went to talk to someone, and Chris did a move which I used to do as someone testifying, which is stopping and saying, "Council member, are you listening to me?" So thank you, Chris, for keeping me accountable. So I did go to the oversight hearing on the deputy mayor for planning and economic development, as Chris knows, to get up to speed on the McMillan issue. This is a complicated issue that has gone on for a long time, has been talked about many times on this program, and I want largely to learn. I actually also went because there's a housing program that I was interested in, or a housing tool called inclusionary zoning, and I went to the hearing to talk about that as well. But what came up in that hearing, as Chris said, was there was a concern by some residents who testified about the use of a PR firm receiving public monies from the city, and whether those monies were used to combat community opposition to the McMillan plan. It was the first time I saw those documents. As I said on the dais, they were definitely concerning to me. Chairman Mendelson also said that he wanted to look more into it, and I encouraged him to do so.
Thank you very much for your call, Christoph.
Did we say enough about Barry Farm, or just yeah? I think I was again. You go over to Barry Farm. That is such a huge piece of land. It's right near the old St. East property where Homeland Security is building its massive operation. That the Barry Farm desperately needs repair and fixing.
Yep.
But it's the age-old thing that you take people out of public housing to fix their public housing, and too many of them never return.
It's definitely true, and it's the new community program is certainly of interest and concern to me, because there's supposed to be one-to-one replacement. We haven't seen that. Public housing is also of interest to me, and I've met with Adrian Todman, the director of our public housing agency, because as we mentioned before, if you are working at a minimum wage job, you just can't afford market rate housing in this city. We need to provide subsidized housing for residents who are in low wage jobs. It's just you cannot afford a $1,600 one bedroom apartment working at $9.50 an hour.
And when the last word, if I can, on McMillan, it seems to me that the mayor has pulled back a half dozen or more development projects, given the continued opposition. It just seems maybe there needs to be more public discussion of what they're doing there. That's remarkable space if you haven't seen it. Just remarkable.
I actually went by McMillan twice today.
I don't mean you haven't seen it, because I know I mean the public, the people who are listening
certainly
to
more
us.
transparency.
Yes.
I think is welcome in all kinds of economic development projects, especially one I think as complex as McMillan. And I hope that we, the council, as well as the mayor, will pursue more engagement and dialogue about how we're proceeding on these economic development plans and what goals we hope to accomplish with
And this
them.
is why maybe the council should keep its authority to review contracts.
So that's a good segue, Tom. So I am interested in our contracting process. I have taken the position that I'd like to see the council get out of the contracting review, largely because it's so they're fraught with politics and has been and that has been a big concern in the past. But I think there are some contracts that are before the council, like Horizon, which
That's
the jail
Contract for
healthcare
jail,
contract would raise questions about, I think, the RFP process and contracting in general, because there's so many concerns about this contract. And I know I'm getting lobbied a lot by Corizon, and it just raises questions
Would
for
that be
me.
Max Brown?
It would be
He's a
Max
lot.
as well as the Corizon executives, but it raises concerns just about how we do contracting.
On to the telephones again. Here is Jason in Washington, D.C. Jason, your turn.
Hey, thank you for having me, Kojo. Listen, my question is to Alyssa, is in terms of transparency. She's really into transparency in the budget and all that. I want to let you know that Brianna Nadeau, her chief of staff, was paid $90,000 and from MVP, and this is a developer that is involved with McMillan Park project.
Oh, come on.
Doesn't that bother you that she is that MVP has somebody on the council and on the staff there getting paid $90,000 a year? Isn't that a conflict of interest? And how do you stand for that since you're on the council?
Well, let's be clear. If they're not being paid, if they're chief of staff, they're not being paid by any outside entity. They may have been paid before they took the.
This
chief
is
of
work
staff.
that was
I do
done
have to
before.
say that apparently this caller indicated to our screener that his question had to do with oversight hearing on the budget and how much is in the budget for parks. But I do believe the McMillan activists have orchestrated calls to this broadcast to make sure that you can discuss McMillan under the guise of asking about other subjects. Please don't do that. But here's Alyssa Silverman.
Well, as I said before, Kojo, I am interested in learning more about, McMillan, as well as Walter Reed, as well as many of our other economic development projects. And part of the reason that I go to hearings is really to listen and to try to get up to speed and understand what we're doing.
We spoke to the city's auditor, Kathy Patterson, on this show a few weeks ago on the Kojo Namdi show about a report she recently completed that found the contractor running the city shelter for homeless families had overbilled the city for millions of dollars. What did that report say to you about how the city should be moving forward in specific terms at DC General and on homelessness more broadly?
Well, I'm glad that the auditor took a look at our homeless spending, and I think there's going to be a more programmatic report audit on how we're spending our homeless dollars. It is of great concern that we're spending our dollars well, because these are our most vulnerable families in our city. We want to make sure that we are spending wisely. One of the things that concerns me is that year after year, winter comes, we have a rush of families who end up in motels. It's an expensive way to shelter families. And it's also an ineffective way of sheltering families in that we're not moving these families to stability. And it has cascading effects on, how we're approaching education reform, in that, these are families with kids who, if they don't have a safe place to get a good night's sleep, they're not going to perform well in school. So I think more focus on our contractor, the community partnership is very welcome, because right now we don't really have an understanding of how the community partnership is spending its dollars. I think we need to have more transparency in our homeless services. We also just need to move toward a better system. DC General, one of the things that was interesting to me when I looked at our spending on DC General is like how much we spend on just making sure that facility is secure. $1 out of $4 just goes to providing security, which is incredibly important in light of Relisha Rudd and other incidents that have happened there. But what we really want to be spending our dollars is on providing permanent shelter to these families and the wraparound services that they need in order to live on their own and move out of our shelter system and be able to go to work, go to school, and live productive lives.
We're almost out of time. I know you wanted to talk about the marijuana seed exchange, and Tom always has a last question, so go.
I had one more about housing, but apparently we're out of time. Well, it was significant. I talked to Mark Seagraves, who from Channel 4 went to the seed giveaway, and he said he was struck by the the diversity of the crowd. Not only were there several thousand people apparently who lined up, but it was a truly diverse, from the stoners that you would expect to just, business people. And Andy Litsky, who's an ANC commissioner in Southwest, my ANC commissioner, he was there, and he was acknowledging and giving interviews about how he was there to get his seeds. What do you think? First of all, the mayor stood up to Congress, the intimidation of some members of Congress to not go forward with this, and now the city has. Now we're giving out seeds. Are we a marijuana city now?
Well, I think we're in a crazy position right now, which is we want to make sure that, Initiative 71 passed. It's what the voters will. I think it should be implemented properly, which means that we want to be able to move toward a system of tax and regulation, so that we want to make sure that we have a good public health approach to this, as well as take advantage as a city that other states who have legalized marijuana are able to do.
Seagraves also noted that the police were there, and he said he had nothing but praise for the DC police who monitored the crowd. People were smoking there. Police did nothing, just made sure there was order. But the next seed giveaway is on Massachusetts Avenue Saturday at 4:20 in the afternoon for some reason. I don't know why they picked 4:20, but Seagraves said there's concern that is among embassies, and there will be Secret Service uniform officers in that area. People could be more likely arrested. It could be a more difficult situation Saturday.
You only got about 30 seconds.
Well, it seemed very orderly yesterday, right?
DC police.
And so I guess the trick, I have heard that the trick of actually growing the marijuana is not so easy. And I certainly have killed many plants on my own. So I'm, so I did not any kind of plant, actually, Tom. But I think it is a shame that we cannot move toward a system to really implement our legalization fully, and I hope we will be able to do that soon.
Alyssa Silverman, she's a member of the DC Council. She's an independent who holds an at-large seat. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Kojo.
You mentioned that your mother would be listening today.
She is listening. She is one of your biggest fans. She just loves you and Tom. I keep telling her that, she should come and meet you.
She thinks we were hard enough on you.
Sucking up. Here she's such a bureaucrat now. She used the word programmatic, that she's praising her mother on TV, on radio.
I can't stay and join David Alpert. There's an extra seat here.
Goodbye, Alyssa.
Don't become Jack Evans. We have to pry Jack Evans out of his chair.
Joining us in studio, as you've guessed by now, is David Alpert. He's the founder and editor-in-chief of Greater Washington. David Alpert, good to see you.
Hi, Kojo. Thanks for having me back.
David, it's fair to say that public transit is not faring well politically in our region. When you consider that the future of the Purple Line is in doubt in Maryland, the streetcar has been canceled in Virginia, the streetcar is on the ropes in DC, how do you account for all of this?
Part of this is a natural up and down of projects, and because we had a lot of transportation projects, transit projects that were planned in a decade or two recently, and some of them have gotten to that stage of the process where now some of the flaws or some of the controversies are coming up, and there's been a little bit of a political dynamic where some locations, including Maryland, have had a political shift that's led to some opposition. But it's important to mention, we opened the first phase of the Silver Line last year as well. And now people can ride the Metro to Tyson's. That's a tremendous improvement for transit. And there's also still a lot of political support for transit in the region, especially
Why
DC.
have the politics changed now? It would seem that concerns about spending would carried more weight to the economic crisis 5-6 years ago.
I think part of it is that, there's a few things. One is in Arlington, for example, you had the sequester has actually hit Arlington pretty hard. And that has led to a little bit of a political shift in Arlington, particularly where there's now a new generation of politicians that are trying to attack some capital projects. Transit was the largest one in Arlington. In Maryland, I think it was just the natural shift of we had the O'Malley administration. Then in what was kind of a surprise even to Governor Larry Hogan. Larry Hogan won in Maryland. He had run on a platform of sort of criticizing a lot of what was going on in the metro areas in DC and Baltimore area. And so now maybe making good on that promise.
In Maryland, Hogan has still not moved and made a proposal to do away with the purple line or the red line in the Baltimore area. But the legislature is ending, and the Democratic legislature has reserved funds and said it can't be anything but that until the governor makes a stand. When do you think he will make a decision on this?
He said that he's basically asked the bidders to all go back and come up with ways to save money. And I think that everyone's trying to watch and figure out what he's really trying to do. Is this a pretext to try to cancel it, where he says, "Oh, we need to save money," and then whatever they come up with, "Oh, that wasn't enough money, I'm canceling," or is it just a way to sort of follow through on a campaign promise that he would push back on the cost a little bit, but recognizing that this project really has to happen? A lot of business people in Maryland have been pushing really hard for the Purple Line. A few just very recently said this is a top business priority and it's important for the economic growth in Montgomery and Prince George's County.
The streetcars, it's not going to be much in the district if Mayor Bowser even keeps the 8th Street line, and it was killed in Arlington, and Montgomery County is starting this 81. It's planning to have an 81-mile rapid bus transit. Are we going to see, rather than rail lines, are we going to see rapid buses everywhere?
I think that exploring ways to make the buses better is a really great way to improve transit that a lot of the region's governments haven't pursued to the extent that they can. In DC, we have a lot of times when I was just at a forum that the Metro Union organized downtown at H Street and New York Avenue. And when I got there, there were lines and lines of buses on the street just waiting to get through some of the intersections. I mean, half of the vehicles on that street were buses, and they were moving a large number of people. But we don't optimize our traffic network as much as we could to make sure those buses go through. We have
no traffic control aids at major intersections. We have no police directing traffic. There's nothing to make it good for buses, cars, or trucks to get through our streets.
Absolutely. And now DDOT is starting to study a bus lane on 16th Street that could move the buses there. That's one of the most heavily used bus lanes in the entire region. I hope that study leads to a good option, and then DC continues to explore more, as do Maryland and Virginia. Virginia, by the way, has the Metroway in the Crystal City, Potomac Yard area, which has been a success.
If you have questions or comments about transit for David Alpert, give us a call. He is the founder and editor-in-chief of Greater Washington. We're at 800-433-8850. You wrote for the Washington Post earlier this month that better transit can't wait, not just for the district, but for the region. What do you see at stake by how things move here in the short term?
Great question. We are the region's growing a lot. There are a lot of places in the district that like some of the ones like McMillan, which the callers were talking about before, which are slated for a lot of new residents and jobs. A lot of places in Maryland and Virginia that are the same. But we can't have we want these new people to be coming, but can't have that happen without some way to get people around that doesn't just mean more cars. It'll add more traffic. Exactly. So how do you do that? Transit is the way to do it, and because some of these things that were planned a decade ago ran into some trouble, it means that local governments need to be planning now for what they're going to do, so that in a decade we're not in traffic misery and don't have any way to get out of it.
We're in traffic misery now. One of the big issues, Paul Godden is how you say his name, wrote for you. Godden.
I actually don't know. When we see everything on the emails, I don't know how to get
Greater Washington. He wrote, and he said one of the big issues that people don't realize is that the federal government, the subsidy for riding transit or parking your car, if you can get a credit for your income, I think it's $250 a month if you drive your car and park it somewhere. If you ride transit, you only get $130 a month. But why not fix that with Congress, with all those federal workers?
It would be fantastic if Congress fixed it. Of course, they've been
on the Hill. In the Hill, who would even pays attention to this?
A lot of folks in Congress have been trying to introduce it. That the transit benefit declined a few years back. Then people in Congress were able to get a short increase to make it match parking again, but it was always in the budget as temporary, so then it would keep on expiring. And this year there hasn't been the ability with all the gridlock and everything like that. And unfortunately, transit's something that outside of the cities, outside the metro areas, aren't as used. So a lot of Congress people don't think it's very important.
The Council of Government says we're going to have 1 million more people in this area by 2040. Is that even before then?
I think that's right.
It's a huge number. And
absolutely.
At the very time as Kojo was suggesting, we're losing our nerve on some transit issues. We're going to need more people.
As when you say losing your nerve, Arlington County, run entirely by Democrats, politics contribute to the streetcars demise there. It's going to affect Arlington and Fairfax. When you say the transit planners need to start thinking in terms of political fights, not planning fights, what do you mean?
That's right. I mean, Arlington, for example, you said Arlington. Arlington had this sort of one-party system a little bit where there was a consensus among all the people elected to the board. They went through a process of a lot of public input to come up with a plan and so forth.
But the politics was the Arlington way.
Absolutely. And the politics of that has unfortunately changed some. While it's still a Democratic county, there are, in a sense, two parties. There are the people that were sort of affiliated with the old county board and the people that are critical of it.
There's a north-south split in the county.
Exactly. And the north, and right. And so the new folks have, to some extent, said to the people in the north who got, their orange line in the past and got a lot of public investment, let's you should be critical of spending in of all this capital spending. I think there's a subtext of you should actually be critical of that spending being in the South. And people don't say that outright, but you hear a lot of that. And Bob McCartney wrote a really good column in the Washington Post about that dynamic where he analyzed the election results and saw that there really has been a greater split, as you said, Tom.
Yeah, Walter Tejada had talked about it here on this program.
Onto the telephones, put on your headphones, Tom, because Willis in Silver Spring, Maryland wants to talk about one of your favorite topics. Willis, you're on the air. Go ahead, please.
Yes, good afternoon. Enjoying the program. I live in Silver Spring, Maryland, and I hear from my neighbors, one of the things that we are trying to figure out that we can't seem to get answers to is what is going on with the Silver Spring Transit Center. Are we in a current situation where they're just going to have to tear the whole damn thing down and start over? And we also want to know, how can the powers that be in Montgomery County even begin to think about a purple line if they can't even build a metro station?
David?
So
this was one of Tom's favorite topics.
Tom probably knows all about the answer. Obviously, there's been, as you know, and a lot of folks who've been following the news know, this enormous contracting mess where I don't know all the specific, I can't recite all the details. Maybe Tom can, but
Metro
people who were supposed to pour the concrete did it incorrectly, and there was insufficient oversight and all these other failings. It really is a mess. It's costing the county a lot of money to fix. These things unfortunately happen sometimes in, not that they're right or that they should ever be tolerated, but you hear these in different areas periodically when something really goes wrong with contracting. It's not any reason to. It's also not the metro station. It's a bus station, but it's a very much needed bus station for Silver Spring, and it shouldn't be any reason to block the Purple Line at all. First of all, it's all different people. The Purple Line's being built by the state. If it does get built, the Purple Line's been under plan for a long time, and they won't use the same contractors. So just because one thing's a mess, doesn't mean we shouldn't do something else that's really valuable. But of course, it's very important for Montgomery County to get this problem fixed.
I think that pretty well summarizes it. I think it's $100 million over budget. It's 2 or 3 years behind. There's been some recent movement to get it to where it can be used, but it's a huge embarrassment for the county.
Let's talk Metro. Richard Sarles came to Metro during a time of crisis in the wake of the 2009 Red Line crash. He left Metro as it was dealing with crisis. What's the way forward for Metro here, in your view?
There's been a little bit of a fight going on right now, which, inside the Metro board about what kind of person they want to have as the next general manager. Some of the folks who were running the board before, Mort Downey, who's the current chair, Tom Downs, who had been Vincent Gray's pick for the board, they wanted another seasoned transit insider, another Rich Sarles. Muriel Bowser came in as mayor and said, no, I think we need someone who's going to turn the place around. I'm very heartened by the idea that that there might be an outsider coming into Metro. I think it does need an outsider because there are some things about the culture inside the organization that really need to be shaken up. On the other hand, depending on who's talking about what they're looking for, if they're just looking for someone who will kind of come in with an axe and cut a lot of things, I'm a little nervous about that because we depend on all the service that Metro runs, and some of that service makes more money back than other service. For example, late night service, doesn't get as much money back, but it's really very valuable for the businesses, for the residents who depend on it. So an outsider should come in to figure out how to make everything more efficient at Metro, not reduce the level of service. In fact, if anything, we need more transit service, more bus and train service.
And just this week, there was the public meeting where the union members spoke out in public about how they're not supported, how the Metro Police, and when you never see the Metro Police officers, I don't even know how many there are, but people tell me they never see Metro Police officers and where they need them. They bring out the dogs every couple of months when there's some kind of terrorism thing. They do a dog and pony show with the dogs, then they disappear again. You see the cars occasionally parked outside Metro transit centers. But I don't know that there's any actual running. So you do need somebody who comes in who actually will run the place and not be somebody who can tell you about the gauge of a track, but who can.
Tom likes to ask if
traffic.
Metro needs a Michelle Reed. Do you think it needs somebody who will just shake up the system?
I think it does need an outsider in a number of ways. Leif Dormstra, the head of DDOT, has said that it needs a CEO as opposed to, I think this gets to exactly what Tom was saying. It needs someone who's going to think about it from I'm managing this organization standpoint as opposed to running the specific
Tom
transit.
is also interested in the fact that Marlowe Furniture is promising to refund all purchases made between March 30th and April 6th. If the Baltimore Orioles end up playing the Washington Nationals in the World Series, it'll be millions of dollars. Marlowe won't lose any money because they're going to insure all of their sales during that time.
You know, it's a nice gambit. It certainly is a PR thing from DC-based Marlowe Furniture Company. But to get the Nats and the Orioles in the World Series would be terrific as a community thing, as a business thing, and then Marlowe will sell some of its furniture. Now, it's been done before, and I think Warren Buffett, I've got a note here, he gave $10 million in refunds, Jordan's Furniture, when the Red Sox won the World Series. So it's not a new idea, but it'd be cool if that happened. But we'll just see.
And so a lot of people will rush to buy furniture during that, hoping that if they two meet in the World Series, then
that's not a good financial decision to make.
They'll get all of their money back or not, and found out that they have some furniture they may not have needed. David Alpert is the founder and editor-in-chief of Greater Washington. David, thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much, Kojo.
Tom Sherwood is our resident analyst. He's a reporter for NBC4 and a columnist for the current newspapers. Need new furniture?
No, but I might stop by the seed giveaway Saturday just to see what's happening.
And we'll stop by just to see you. Thank you all for listening. I'm Kojo Nandi. Coming up Monday on the Kojo Nandi Show, a man held in an Arlington County jail without